So picture this. You're sitting across a conference table. Or, maybe you're just at your kitchen table. The stakes are really high.
Right.
You want like a 20% raise and your boss wants to give you 5%. Or maybe you want your teenager to be home by 10 and they're demanding midnight.
A classic standoff.
Exactly. And conventional wisdom, like the stuff we've all been taught since kindergarten, tells you exactly what you're supposed to do next, right? You meet in the middle, you compromise.
Split the difference.
Yeah, you shake hands and everyone walks away relatively satisfied. But today, on this deep dive, we are going to explain why compromising is actually the worst possible thing you can do.
It really is. It completely flips the script on everything we think we know about human interaction.
Totally. And we'll get into how adopting the mindset of an FBI international hostage negotiator is basically the only way to get exactly what you want.
Because the fundamental truth is, well, we are not the rational, logical machines we pretend to be. We are highly emotional, profoundly irrational creatures.
Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, you and I, and when I say you, I mean you listening right now, we are embarking on this massive, high-stakes exploration of human psychology. We're looking at communication and the hidden mechanics of persuasion.
Yeah, we are dissecting the exact strategies used by the former lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI.
Right, and before you think, I don't negotiate with international mercenaries, so this doesn't apply to me, we really need to reframe what negotiation actually is.
Absolutely, because it's not just boardroom contracts or hostage standoffs. Life itself is a negotiation.
Exactly. Every single time you express the urge, I want, you are in a negotiation. Whether it's I want a raise or I want you to go to bed.
Precisely. If you are trying to gather information or, influence someone's behavior, you are negotiating. But it is vital to set the tone right out of the gate here. When we use that word, we are not talking about browbeating.
Right. No one is bringing a folding chair into the ring here.
Exactly. No wrestling moves. This isn't about grinding someone down into submission or holding their feet to the fire. What we are truly examining is applied emotional intelligence.
Applied emotional intelligence. I like that.
Yeah, it's about coaxing, co-opting, and navigating the invisible emotional currents that human society is basically built upon. You get what you ask for in this world, but you have to know how to navigate the emotional landscape to ask effectively.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how radical this FBI approach is, we have to look at what it was up against. We have to look at the historical battle between pure logic and raw emotion.
Like a fascinating clash.
It really is. And there is this highly specific, incredibly tense encounter that perfectly encapsulates this. So imagine a former Kansas City beat cop who worked his way up to become the FBI's top negotiator, and he walks into Harvard Law School.
Right, which is the absolute epicenter of academic negotiation theory.
The belly of the beast. He's taking an executive course expecting some quiet professional development, but instead, he gets ambushed.
A total setup.
Yeah. The director of the Harvard Negotiation Research Project, who is an absolute titan in conflict resolution, invites him to his office. But when he sits down, in walks another international negotiations specialist, someone who spent 8 years with the Israeli National Security Council. These are heavy hitters.
And they aren't there for a casual chat over coffee.
Yeah.
The director's secretary literally places a tape recorder on the table.
I mean, can you imagine?
The director looks at him, smiles, and says, "We've got your son. Give us $1 million or he dies. I'm the kidnapper. What are you going to do?"
It is the ultimate intellectual stress test.
Right.
And to understand the arrogance, and I mean that objectively, the sheer confidence in that room, you really have to understand the Harvard model at the time.
Right. For decades, their approach was built on this impenetrable edifice of pure rationality.
Yeah, it assumed that humans are, at their core, rational, selfish actors trying to maximize their value.
It was very mathematical. They relied heavily on process, on game theory, on acronyms like BATNA, which stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement.
BATNA, right.
Yeah, the core philosophy was that if you separate the emotion from the problem and follow a logical sequence of steps, you will inevitably reach a mutually beneficial, rational compromise. They viewed negotiation as an equation to be balanced.
But a guy holding a gun to your kid's head isn't an equation.
Exactly.
So our FBI guy doesn't do A, B, C, and D. The Harvard professor is sitting there threatening to cut his son's throat. And the FBI guy, this street cop surrounded by Harvard geniuses, doesn't try to out-logic them. He doesn't calculate his BATNA.
He doesn't even try.
He just gives the professor a slow stare, smiles, and says, I'm sorry, Robert, how do I know he's even alive?
which instantly flusters the professor.
Completely derails him. The professor snaps back something like, "So you're okay with me killing your son?" And the negotiator just calmly replies, "I really am sorry, but how can I get you any money right now, much less $1 million, if I don't even know he's alive?"
It's brilliant.
He just keeps asking, how am I supposed to do that?
What's happening in this room is a masterclass in what the FBI calls calibrated questions. These are open-ended queries, meticulously designed. They usually start with how or what, and they require the other side to respond.
But there are no fixed binary answers, right?
Exactly. They can't just say yes or no and move on. And the psychological utility of this is incredible. First, in a crisis, it buys you time.
Which is crucial.
But on a deeper level, it gives the counterpart, the Harvard professor in this case, the illusion of control. He feels like he holds the power because he is the one being asked to solve the problem.
Right, he's the one supposedly calling the shots.
But in reality, the negotiator has completely hijacked his mental bandwidth. He has forced the Harvard professor to expend his own cognitive energy solving the negotiator's logistical problems.
Okay, I have to jump in here with some pushback, because if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, well, wait, how does just repeating how am I supposed to do that defeat world-class Harvard professors?
It's a fair question.
I mean, the other specialist jumps in, tries the bulldozer approach, gets hit with the same calibrated questions, and also gets nowhere. The director eventually gets red in the face with frustration and just gives up. But logically, shouldn't their flawless academic arguments win out over a guy just plain dumb?
You'd think so if humans were purely logical.
Yeah, like why didn't the professor just say, "Figure it out," or he dies?
That skepticism is exactly why the academic model failed in the real world. To understand why flawless logic loses to calibrated questions, we have to look at behavioral economists, specifically Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner.
Exactly. Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for proving that human beings are absolutely not the rational actors the academic models assumed we were.
This is the two-system brain concept from his book Thinking Fast and Slow, right?
Yes. Kahneman outlined that our brains operate on two distinct systems. System one is our animal mind. It is fast, instinctive, automatic, and entirely emotional. System two is the slow, deliberative, logical part of our brain. The fatal flaw of the old Harvard models was the assumption that negotiations take place in System 2.
We want to believe we are Spock, just operating purely on logic.
We all want to believe that, but we aren't. Kahneman proved that System 1 is actually the dominant force. In fact, System 1's emotional subconscious reactions are the spring that feeds the river of System 2's logic.
Wow, so the emotion comes first, always.
Always. Our rational brain is usually just working overtime to justify what our emotional brain has already decided. Kahneman and Tversky mapped out over 150 cognitive biases that distort our reality based on these emotional impulses.
It's like, cognitive bias is an optical illusion for the brain. You can intellectually know the lines are straight, but your brain insists they're crooked based on how it feels about the visual input.
That is a perfect analogy. So why does the FBI method break the Harvard professor? Because when the negotiator asks, how am I supposed to do that? He completely bypasses the professor's System 2 logic and targets his System 1 emotional mind. The question implicitly suggests that the demand is unfair or impossible. This triggers a subtle emotional discomfort in System 1. Then, the professor's System 2 has to kick in to rationalize a new, better offer to relieve that emotional discomfort.
You simply cannot negotiate using System 2 logic without first understanding and manipulating the System 1 emotion.
Precisely.
It's like you cannot negotiate with the rider of the elephant without first taming the elephant itself.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this wasn't just a fun debate for the FBI. This realization was paid for in blood.
Yeah. For decades, the FBI used a brute force logic approach. Their strategy was basically, talk logically until we can get a clear shot at the guy.
And that approach culminated in utter disasters.
Yeah.
The fatal sieges at Ruby Ridge in 1992 and the Branch Davidian compound in Waco in 1993 forced a massive reckoning.
Because you cannot use rational problem solving with the guy who genuinely believes he's the Messiah.
You really can't.
If someone's entire reality is dictated by an extreme emotional or religious state, telling them it's illogical to die today means absolutely nothing.
Exactly. The FBI realized that almost every crisis situation was an emotionally driven incident. not a rational bargaining transaction.
Well,
They had to throw out the old playbook. They had to become world-class experts in empathy and emotional navigation.
which brings us to the most fundamental yet probably most misunderstood skill in this entire framework.
Active listening.
Right. And to illustrate this, let's go back to September 30th, 1993, Chase Manhattan Bank in Brooklyn.
A textbook crisis.
It was crazy. Two masked, heavily armed men burst through the doors. They pistol whip the security guard, drag him to the bathroom, lock him in. They grab a teller, do the same thing. The ringleader literally puts a gun in another teller's mouth, pulls the trigger, it clicks empty, and he leans in and says, "Next one is real, open the vault."
Terrifying.
It is a terrifying, chaotic, incredibly high-stakes situation. And it happens to be this specific FBI negotiator's very first primary negotiation job.
And the initial response from law enforcement that day perfectly illustrates the lethal danger of operating on those old System 2 assumptions.
Right, because the police arrive, they set up a wall of blue and white cruisers. SWAT teams are on the roofs.
And the assumption command was working with was standard protocol bank robbers get trapped. They realize they're surrounded. They want to surrender. It was supposed to be a short, logical process.
But every single assumption they made was dead wrong.
Yeah.
The robbers didn't want to surrender. The ringleader was actively planting misinformation on the phone. He was asking for a getaway van, pretending he was terrified of his partners, basically playing the police like a fiddle.
This highlights a critical rule of high-level negotiation.
Yeah.
Great negotiators never trust their initial assumptions.
Never.
They treat their assumptions as hypotheses that must be rigorously tested in the moment. The police initially rushed the process, trying to be efficient problem solvers instead of what they needed to be, which is people movers.
Yeah, and the physical setup was a total disaster, too. They were all crammed into this tiny bank office across a narrow street, practically on top of each other. You have one guy on the phone with the robber and a whole team of people huddled around him, whispering, passing notes, listening in.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. If I'm listening to this right now, I'm thinking, why on earth do you need 5 highly trained agents just to listen to one guy talk on the phone?
Because of a fundamental limitation of human neurology. The psychologist George A. Miller proved that the conscious human mind can only process roughly 7 pieces of information at any given moment.
7 pieces, that's not a lot.
It's not. We are incredibly susceptible to cognitive overload.
The way I think about this is like trying to play a complex video game. We imagine a negotiation as 2 people sitting on a couch playing a co-op game together. But in reality, it's like 2 people playing 2 completely different games on the same TV screen, mashing buttons and just waiting for the other person to pause so they can shout about their own score.
That's brilliant.
It is a state of absolute cognitive schizophrenia.
That is exactly what happens. It's called selective listening.
Yeah.
You are so intensely preoccupied by the arguments supporting your own position, so focused on what you are going to say next, that you literally lack the cognitive bandwidth to hear what the other person is actually communicating.
You're just deafened by your own internal monologue. But if both people are just listening to their own internal monologues, my instinct is usually to just talk louder, to dominate the conversation and force my point through. But I'm guessing that just makes the other person's internal voice yell even louder in defense.
Precisely. Pushing harder only increases resistance. The cure for this negotiation schizophrenia is to treat 2 schizophrenics with 1 pill. You have to quiet the voice in your head and the voice in their head simultaneously.
Wow. Okay. How do you do that?
The only way to accomplish that is to make your soul all-encompassing focus the other person. You have to make them feel profoundly safe enough to talk. When they feel truly heard, their internal monologue calms down.
And when they talk, you can finally differentiate between what they want and what they actually need.
Yes, because wants are surface-level aspirations. They're easy to vocalize. I want $1 million. I want a helicopter.
Right.
Needs, however, imply survival. Needs are deeply vulnerable. I need to not be humiliated. I need to feel respected. To uncover those hidden needs, you have to establish immediate safety.
And the fastest, most biological way to establish that safety is through the physical tone of your voice.
Yes, voice tone is everything.
The voices. This is one of my favorite concepts. There are 3 specific negotiator voices you can use. First, There's the assertive or direct voice.
which is almost universally destructive.
Really?
Yeah, it signals dominance. It is the voice of someone who is entirely focused on their own goals. Using it triggers immediate, aggressive System 1 pushback. It is the equivalent of slapping yourself in the face while trying to make forward progress.
Good to know. So then you have the positive playful voice. This should be the default for most interactions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You relax, you physically smile while you're talking, and it's wild, but even on a phone call, a physical smile translates tonally.
It alters the shape of your vocal cords.
That's so crazy. It signals to the other person's brain that you are collaborative and mentally agile.
But then there's the third voice,
The surgical tool.
the one the negotiator used when he finally took over the phone after 5 hours of the Brooklyn standoff going absolutely nowhere.
Yes.
The late-night FM DJ voice. I am completely obsessed with this. It is deep, soft, slow, and downward inflecting. He gets on the phone and just says, "Joe's gone. This is Chris. You're talking to me now."
He doesn't ask a question. He makes a slow, downward inflecting statement.
And the neuroscience behind this is staggering.
Yeah.
When you inflect your voice upward at the end of a sentence, you are signaling uncertainty. You are asking for permission.
You leave the conversational door open, which forces their brain to stay active and defensive.
Right. But when you inflect downward, you signal absolute certainty. You signal, "I have got this covered. I am completely in control of the situation."
Okay, let me push back here, though. Because if I'm negotiating, like, a massive corporate contract, or even just trying to get a better rate from my plumber, and I suddenly drop my voice an octave and start sounding like Barry White,
Right.
I mean, I'm going to sound ridiculous. How does that not completely backfire and make me look manipulative?
It's a fair concern, but you aren't putting on a cartoonish accent, you know? You are just altering your cadence and your resonance. Think of it like throwing a weighted blanket over someone's nervous system.
A weighted blanket.
Yeah, it is a biological hack. It taps into involuntary neurological mirroring. When your voice drops and slows, it bypasses their logical defenses and instantly triggers a neurochemical shift in their brain, switching their emotional state from agitated to calm.
So they don't consciously think, wow, what a nice deep voice.
Exactly. Their nervous system simply aligns with yours automatically.
Wow. So he hits the lead robber, who they eventually identify as Chris Watts, with this weighted blanket DJ voice, and then he uses the next tool, the FBI mirror. Now, when normal people hear mirroring, we think of body language, like if you cross your arms, I cross my arms.
Right, physical mirroring.
But this is purely verbal.
Yes, the FBI mirror is deceptively simple. It consists of simply repeating the last 3 words, or the critical 1 to 3 words, of what someone has just said.
I mean, it sounds absurdly simple. It's like conversational echoing. How does just acting like a parrot actually accomplish anything?
Because it triggers a profound biological principle called isopraxism.
Isopraxism.
Yes, it's a neurobehavior observed across species, where animals copy each other to bond, to comfort one another, and to establish pack hierarchy. It signals similarity.
Because evolutionarily, we fear what is different, and we are instinctively drawn to what is similar.
Exactly. By repeating their words, your unconscious is communicating directly to their unconscious, saying, "Trust me, you and I, we see the world the exact same way."
There's this incredible study that proves this in a completely mundane setting, right? The psychologist Richard Wiseman conducted an experiment with waiters.
Oh, yes.
He split them into 2 groups. One group used positive reinforcement when taking orders. They used words like, great, sure thing, no problem. The other group purely mirrored the customers. They just repeated the exact orders back to them.
And the results were wild.
The mirrored waiters received 70% higher tips. 70%. Just for parroting the words.
It works because the mirror creates a subtle cognitive friction in the other person that demands they elaborate. It makes them feel understood, but it also compels them to fill the silence with more information.
Right. So back in the Brooklyn bank, the robber, Chris Watts, says to the negotiator, the other vehicle's not out there because you guys chased my driver away. And the negotiator simply mirrors, we chased your driver away.
And Watts immediately starts vomiting crucial information about a getaway accomplice the FBI didn't even know existed.
The mirror acts as a conversational Swiss Army knife. It insinuates similarity, it buys you time to think, and it keeps the counterpart talking and revealing their hand.
But, and this is important, the negotiator actually steps on his own toes a minute later in that scenario. The momentum is going great, and then he asks Watts, "Are you Chris Watts?" He broke the mirror.
Ah, he did. Because a mirror requires a bed of silence to work its magic, right?
Yes. You repeat the words, and then you must stay completely silent for at least 4 seconds. By rushing in with a direct binary question, he gave Watts an escape hatch.
He allowed Watts to just say no and clam up, which broke the isopraxic bond.
Exactly. But the psychological damage to Watts' confidence was already done.
Hmm.
He realizes the FBI knows exactly who he is. He panics, and he puts his accomplice, a guy named Bobby, on the phone.
And Bobby is in full meltdown mode. He's terrified. He's literally speaking through a towel.
And the negotiator just leans into that calm DJ voice. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's going to get hurt. He keeps Bobby talking. He uses calibrated questions like, what's stopping you from coming out right now?
And eventually Bobby just walks out the front door.
They co-opted him. They didn't threaten him. They guided him to the conclusion that surrendering was his own idea. Now, the end of that specific standoff got incredibly messy because of poor interagency communication.
Yeah, SWAT didn't realize a door was barricaded. A tech team started drilling a hole in the wall at the exact worst possible moment.
Pure chaos. But the core interaction proved the thesis. Emotion, dialogue, and applied psychology work.
Okay, but this creates a massive logical bridge we need to cross, because mirroring works wonders to keep someone talking when they are relatively stable. But what happens if the person across from you is in a state of pure, blinding panic or rage?
That's a whole different ballgame.
If someone is experiencing a full amygdala hijack, their brain physically cannot process subtle wordplay. You have to shut down the alarm bells in their head first, and that requires a completely different tool.
Which brings us to the most powerful concept in the entire methodology. Tactical empathy.
Let's look at 1998, Harlem. The 27th floor of a high-rise apartment building. 3 heavily armed fugitives are holed up behind a heavy door. They had just survived a shootout with a rival gang.
High stress.
The FBI SWAT team is stacked in the stairwell. Snipers are on the adjacent roofs. But there's no landline to call into the apartment, so the negotiator is standing in the hallway, exposed, speaking through a solid door, for 6 straight hours.
And pay close attention to what he does not do during those 6 hours. He doesn't give orders. He doesn't assert police authority.
He doesn't demand they come out with their hands up. He doesn't even ask them what they want.
Right. He uses the late-night FM DJ voice, and he just speaks to the void. He says things like, it looks like you don't want to come out. It seems like you worry that if you open the door, we'll come in with guns blazing. It looks like you don't want to go back to jail.
He just repeats variations of this for hours. And finally, a curtain twitches. The door slowly opens, and all 3 heavily armed men walk out without a single shot fired. And when they were later asked why they gave up, they said, "We didn't want to get caught or get shot, but you calmed us down. We finally believed you wouldn't go away, so we just came out."
This is the raw power of tactical empathy. Now, empathy is a word that carries a lot of cultural baggage. People often confuse it with sympathy. They think empathy means agreeing with the other person's values or feeling sorry for them or, giving them a hug.
Right, but tactical empathy is entirely different. It is the deliberate ability to recognize the perspective of a counterpart and vocalize that recognition.
It's listening as a martial art.
Listening as a martial art. Wow.
It is understanding their mindset in the specific moment and hearing what is behind those feelings to increase your own leverage and influence. There was a highly publicized moment that illustrates how misunderstood this is, actually.
Oh, the Hillary Clinton speech.
Yes. Hillary Clinton gave a speech at Georgetown University where she advocated for employing empathy toward one's enemies, specifically trying to understand the worldview of terrorists. And she was absolutely pilloried by pundits across the political spectrum. She was called naive. She was accused of sympathizing with evil.
And just a quick reminder to you listening, we aren't taking political sides here. We are strictly looking at the mechanics of negotiation based on the source material. But from a purely mechanical standpoint, the analysis suggests she was entirely correct.
Absolutely, because empathy is not about being nice. Empathy is a tactical intelligence gathering tool. It helps you understand exactly why the enemy's actions make perfect sense to them.
And once you understand their internal logic, you gain the power to predict and influence their next move.
In an fMRI study conducted at Princeton, researchers discovered that when 2 people communicate effectively, their brainwaves literally align in a process called neural resonance.
Neural resonance.
Yes, exceptional listeners can anticipate what someone is going to say before they even open their mouth.
So how do you actively trigger that neural resonance? Like, how do you take those terrifying, volatile emotions in that Harlem hallway and neutralize them?
You use a technique called labeling.
Labeling. Right?
Labeling is the process of validating someone's emotion by acknowledging it out loud. You spot their underlying feelings, You turn them into words, and you calmly repeat those emotions back to them.
But there are very strict rules to the phrasing, right? Like you can't just say, I am hearing that you were scared.
The golden rule of labeling is never use the word I. The moment you say I, people's subconscious guard instantly goes up.
Because it signals that you are making the conversation about yourself and your perceptions.
Exactly. Instead, you must frame the label as a completely neutral statement of observation. You use phrases like, it seems like, it sounds like, or it looks like.
It seems like you don't want to go back to jail.
Yes. And the neuroscience behind why this works is staggering. Matthew Lieberman, a psychology professor at UCLA, conducted fMRI studies showing what happens when the brain processes emotion.
I read about this. It's wild.
When subjects were shown photos of faces expressing intense, raw emotion, the amygdala, which is the brain's fear and threat center, lit up like a Christmas tree. But when the subjects were asked to simply label the emotion they were seeing with a word, the electrical activity immediately moved away from the amygdala and into the prefrontal cortex.
Which is the area governing rational conscious thought.
Exactly.
So applying rational words to a primal fear literally disrupts its raw intensity. It's like a mental circuit breaker. When the emotional surge gets dangerously high, labeling it just trips the breaker and routes the power safely back to the rational part of the house.
That's a great way to put it. Labeling negative emotions diffuses them. Conversely, labeling positive emotions reinforces them. If you want to clear the road of emotional obstacles, you bathe the fears in sunlight, basically bleaching them of their power.
Bleaching them of their power.
But there is a crucial final step to labeling silence. Once you throw out a label, you have to shut up and listen. You have to let the label do its work in their brain.
Which brings us to the most extreme, almost counterintuitive application of labeling, the accusation audit.
Oh, this is a powerful one.
It's so crazy. So the author used to do this icebreaker in his university negotiation classes. He would tell a student they have 60 seconds to talk him out of killing a hostage.
Talk about pressure.
Right. But before asking for volunteers, he labels their collective fears. He says, in case you're worried about volunteering, I want to tell you in advance. It's going to be horrible. You are going to look foolish. And suddenly, hands shoot up all over the room.
Because he preemptively took the sting out of the anxiety. He listed the absolute worst things they were internally thinking and brought them out into the open. An accusation audit is where you exhaustively list every terrible, negative thing your counterpart could possibly say or think about you, and you say it out loud before they get the chance to.
I mean, it sounds utterly terrifying. You are essentially suggesting I walk into a room and say, you probably think I'm a monster who doesn't care about your time.
It feels wrong, but the results are undeniable.
There is this case study about a student named Anna that really proves this. She represented a massive government contractor. They had partnered with a smaller company, ABC Corp, to win a bid, but ABC Corp kept failing to deliver, so Anna's company had to cut ABC's pay.
Ouch.
Yeah, it caused a massive, bitter, toxic fight. And then, to make matters worse, the government client changed the scope of the project, and Anna's company started bleeding money. They had to cut ABC's pay again, slashing them down to just 3 people.
It is a seemingly impossible negotiation scenario. She is walking into a room with a partner who already despises them, only to deliver even worse news.
So Anna and her partner, Mark, sit down and prepare an accusation audit. They brainstorm every horrible thing ABC could possibly say about them. You're a big bad prime contractor forcing out the little guy. You broke your promise. You lied to us. You hid vital information.
And they practice saying them out loud.
Yes. When they get to the meeting, Anna doesn't open with small talk. She opens by saying, you may feel like we have treated you completely unfairly. We acknowledge that you believe you were promised this work.
She labels all their deep-seated fears and grievances right out of the gate. And the psychological effect is profound. By exposing the negatives to daylight, the accusations suddenly sound exaggerated. By saying it first, she steals their ammunition.
And when Anna finally drops the hammer and reveals the bad news that they have to cut the head count, she immediately follows with, it sounds like you think we are the big bad prime contractor trying to push out the small business.
And Angela, the ADC representative, actually leaps to her defense.
Yeah.
She says, no, we don't think that.
It's mind-blowing. Angela's brain has been conditioned by the empathy and acknowledgement to seek out common ground. They end up tweaking the contract, saving Anna's company $1 million, and Angela leaves the meeting saying, we appreciate that you acknowledged what happened. You are not the big bad prime.
$1 million saved because they audited the accusations before the fight could even start.
And if you apply this to everyday life, the utility is endless. Like if you are listening to this and you've got to tell your spouse tonight that you accidentally backed their pristine car into a mailbox.
Oh, no.
Right. Don't just walk in and apologize. Audit the accusation. Walk in, use the DJ voice and say, you are going to think I'm the most careless, irresponsible, oblivious partner in the world. You are going to think I don't respect your things. Watch how quickly they transition from anger to actually comforting you, saying, well, I'm sure it's not that bad. Accidents happen.
It works because you are addressing the emotional elephant in the room before it can trample you. But this raises a fascinating paradox, actually.
Oh, like that.
While we utilize empathy and labeling to diffuse negative emotions, our culture has a incredibly dangerous obsession with a specific positive word, a word we treat as the holy grail of agreement, but which is actually a massive trap.
Yes. The fetishization of the word yes. We have all been trapped by this.
Everyone has.
Think about the classic telemarketer script. Hello, do you enjoy a nice glass of water? Yes. Do you want rain water for your family? Yes. Can I sell you this $1,000 filter?
The worst.
They trap you in this linguistic logic maze where the only exit is yes. But every time you say it, your stomach tightens and you feel like prey being backed into a corner.
Because the telemarketer is operating on the flawed assumption that pushing for yes at all costs creates momentum and that hearing no is death. But for elite negotiators, yes is often completely worthless and no is pure gold.
Wait, how can yes be worthless?
Because there are three distinct types of yes. There's the counterfeit yes, the confirmation yes, and the commitment yes.
Okay, break those down.
A confirmation yes is just a reflex response to a black or white question. Is the sky blue? Yes. A commitment yes is the real deal, the signature on the contract, the actual behavioral change. But the counterfeit yes is what you encounter most often in life. People are absolute masters at deploying it.
It is an escape route.
Exactly. They say yes just to make a pushy person go away, or they say it disingenuously to keep the conversation going so they can gain an edge.
There is a heartbreakingly clear example of this from when the author volunteered at a crisis helpline. He gets a call from Daryl, a frequent caller who suffered from intense agoraphobia. Daryl was terrified of going outside.
Why?
So the author gets on the line and spends 20 minutes logically dismantling Daryl's fears. He gets Daryl to agree, step by step. Yes, it's been a year since anyone hurt me. Yes, the outside world isn't so bad. Daryl even congratulates him at the end of the call for being so helpful.
He thinks he nailed it.
He hangs up thinking he's an absolute superstar, and his supervisor, Jim, taps him on the shoulder and says it was the worst call he has ever heard.
Because the entire interaction was about the negotiator's ego, not Daryl's reality. Daryl provided a string of counterfeit yeses just to feel momentarily good and to politely get off the line. But he had absolutely no intention of changing his behavior. He didn't own the conclusion because he was led there by a logic maze.
Oh, wait, let me put my skeptic hat back on for a second. If yes is fake, doesn't hearing no mean the negotiation has catastrophically failed? Isn't no the ultimate rejection? If I ask my boss for a raise and she says no, the game is over, right?
We have been culturally conditioned to fear no as an absolute termination. But in applied psychology, no is not an end. It is a beginning. The negotiator Jim Camp wrote a brilliant book called Start with NO, where he discusses the concept of giving your counterpart the right to veto.
The right to veto.
When you give someone explicit permission to say no, you're preserving their autonomy. Human beings have a desperate primal need to feel in control. No is a reaffirmation of that autonomy. It provides a temporary oasis of control in a stressful situation. When they're allowed to say no, they feel safe, their defenses drop, and that is when the real negotiation begins.
It is so counterintuitive, but it works. There is an amazing example of a Republican fundraiser named Ben Ottenhoff. He was using standard, aggressive yes pattern scripts to raise money for political candidates. Do you believe gas prices are too high? Yes. Do you want change? Yes. Can you give me your credit card? No.
His return rate was abysmal.
Because the string of yeses felt manipulative. The donors felt trapped, so they used no at the end to regain their freedom.
So he reads about the psychological power of no and completely rewrites his script. He flips the dynamic.
He asks, do you feel America's best days are ahead of it? The person says, no, things will get worse. He asks, are you going to sit and watch the opposing party take the White House without putting up a fight? The person says, no, I'm going to do anything I can.
He says, then give to this committee.
By swapping the pursuit of yes this for the pursuit of no, he put the donor in the driver's seat, and his rate of return skyrocketed by 23%.
He weaponized no to make them feel powerful and protective of their own values.
So if we want to empower them with no, how do we force a no if they are being evasive?
One highly effective tactic is to intentionally mislabel an emotion or a desire. You state something you know is factually wrong.
Like what?
For example, it seems like you are really eager to leave your current job when you know perfectly well they want to stay. That creates an irresistible urge in them to correct you. No, that's not it at all. The real issue is this.
Oh, that's clever.
Or you can simply ask what they don't want. Instead of asking what they will agree to, you say, let's talk about what you would absolutely say no to.
And what if they are completely ghosting you? There's a tactic in here that is pure, unadulterated gold for everyday life. The magic email. When a client, a colleague, or even a friend is stonewalling you, ignoring your calls, what do you send?
You send a single one-sentence email. Have you given up on this project?
It is devastatingly effective. It works because it triggers the natural human aversion to loss. By asking for a definitive no, you give them the illusion of control, but you are implicitly threatening to walk away on your own terms.
To prevent that sudden loss of connection or opportunity, their natural inclination is to reply immediately. They will write back, no, we haven't given up, we've just been swamped with other things. It cuts through the noise across all cultures.
All right, so if yes is a dangerous trap and no is merely the starting line that makes them feel safe, what is the actual finish line? What exact phrase are we trying to extract from them to prove we've won them over?
To understand the true finish line, we need to examine the Behavioral Change Stairway Model, or BCSM. This was developed by the FBI's Elite Crisis Negotiation Unit at Quantico.
Right.
The model dictates that there are 5 sequential stages to altering someone's behavior: active listening, empathy, rapport, influence, and finally, behavioral change.
And the fatal mistake most people make is trying to sprint straight to step 4, influence. Like a doctor looking at a heart patient saying, change your diet or you will die. The patient says, yes, doctor, but statistics show that 90% of the time, 2 years later, they haven't changed a single habit.
Because there was no rapport,
Yeah.
no unconditional positive regard.
Unconditional positive regard. I love that phrase.
That is a term coined by the legendary humanistic psychologist Carl Rogers. Real, lasting behavioral change only occurs when a person feels completely accepted and understood, exactly as they are in that moment. You have to painstakingly walk them up those first 3 steps to engender deep trust.
And the signal that you have achieved that breakthrough moment, the verbal proof of unconditional positive regard, is not the word yes.
It is 2 very specific words, that's right.
That's right.
Importantly, it is not, you're right. It must be, that's right.
Oh man, the distinction here is massive. You're right, is a polite dismissal. There's a story in the material about a son, Brandon, who was a high school football linebacker. Brandon was aggressive. He loved to hit people. But his coach needed him to dodge the blockers to get to the ball carrier.
You're right.
The coach would logically explain the strategy, his dad would explain it, and Brandon would nod and say, you're right. And then he would go out on the very next play and smash face first into the first blocker he saw.
Because you're right is the phrase we use to get people to shut up and leave us alone. When your spouse or your boss is lecturing you with advice, you say, you're right, to end the painful conversation. You might agree with their logic and theory, but you haven't internalized it. You don't own the conclusion.
But watch what happens when his dad changes tactics. He pulls Brandon aside, and instead of lecturing, he uses empathy. He says, you seem to think it's unmanly to dodge a block. You think it's cowardly to get out of someone's way.
And Brandon freezes, looks at his dad and says, that's right.
He fully embraced the reality of his own psychological block. And from that exact moment, he changed his behavior, started dodging blockers, and became a star linebacker.
To see this mechanism applied at the highest possible stakes, we have to look at the 2000 Abu Sayyaf kidnapping in the Philippines. Jeffrey Schilling, an American citizen, was taken hostage by a brutal terrorist named Abu Sabaya.
A terrifying situation.
Sabaya demanded $10 million, but he refused to call it a ransom. He insisted it was war damages for 500 years of historical oppression against Muslims in the Philippines.
For months, it is a total stalemate. The lead Filipino military negotiator, Benji, tries the Harvard logic approach. What does this random American have to do with 500 years of geopolitics?
But Sabaya doesn't care about logic. He just ramps up the threats to torture and kill Schilling.
So the FBI instructs Benji to completely abandon logic. They hit the reset switch. Benji deploys the entire active listening arsenal. He uses pregnant pauses, minimal encouragers, mirroring, and exhaustive labeling.
And it all culminates in the ultimate psychological tool designed to trigger that's right, it's called the summary.
The formula for a summary is simple but profound: paraphrase plus labeling. You re-articulate the factual meaning of what they've said, and you combine it with an acknowledgement of the underlying emotion driving it.
Benji gets on the phone and delivers a flawless summary of the world according to Abu Sabaya. He reflects back Sabaya's warped vision of history, the disputes over fishing rights, the 5 centuries of perceived oppression, the deep-seated anger, and the profound feeling of tragic unfairness. He exhausts Sabaya's version of events without judging it.
And Sabaya goes completely silent on the radio for nearly a minute. And then he softly says, "That's right."
And the results are unbelievable. The $10 million demand for war damages literally evaporated. He never asked for the money again. The dynamic fundamentally shifted.
Sabaya eventually let his guard down. Schilling was able to escape, and Sabaya later told Benji, "I was going to hurt Jeffrey. I don't know what you did to keep me from doing that, but it worked."
It was a stealth victory. By summarizing Sabaya's worldview so perfectly, Benji made the terrorist feel that he had independently assessed the situation and pronounced it correct of his own free will. He didn't feel like he was giving in to the authorities. He felt profoundly understood.
There are amazing civilian examples of this, too. A pharmaceutical rep is getting stonewalled by a doctor who won't buy her drugs. She stops pitching the data and instead summarizes the doctor's deep passion for individualized, tailored patient treatment.
And the doctor looks at her, says, "That's right," drops his defensive guard, and places a massive order.
Or the Korean MBA student who summarizes his ex-boss's unstated desperate need for a loyal ally at corporate headquarters. He gets that's right, and instantly gets the job transfer he had been begging for.
Because once you have their trust, once they feel perfectly understood, their reality becomes fluid and malleable. Which brings us to the next critical phase, bending their reality.
This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of haggling, numbers, and leverage. And the first sacred cow that gets slaughtered here is the concept of compromise.
We are socially conditioned to view compromise as a moral good. We are taught to split the difference, be reasonable, meet halfway to maintain harmony.
It's the mismatched shoes analogy. A husband wants to wear black shoes to a party. His wife wants him to wear brown shoes. If they compromise and meet halfway, he wears one black shoe and one brown shoe. It is literally the worst possible outcome for everyone.
Exactly. We don't compromise because it's the right strategic move. We compromise because it's cognitively easy and it saves face. We are driven by an evolutionary desire to avoid pain and conflict. But in high-stakes negotiations, no deal is vastly superior to a bad deal. If you compromise on a kidnapping ransom, you pay half the money and you still don't get the hostage back.
Which was the tragic reality in Haiti. Haiti experienced a massive boom, becoming the kidnapped capital of the world. But analysts discovered a bizarre pattern. The kidnappings always spiked on Mondays and mysteriously ended by Fridays.
And why is that?
Because these weren't political zealots or cartel masterminds. They were street thugs who just wanted cash to party on the weekend.
And this reveals a massive truth about deadlines. Deadlines are the imaginary bogeymen of negotiation. They create immense pressure and anxiety because our System 1 brain imagines catastrophic consequences if we miss them. But in reality, deadlines are almost always arbitrary and highly flexible.
Conventional wisdom, like from Herb Cohen's famous 1980s book, You Can Negotiate Anything, is that you must rigorously hide your deadlines. Cohen went to Japan, spent a week refusing to negotiate, and got completely squeezed by his counterparts in the taxi on the way to the airport because they knew exactly when his flight left, but he didn't know their timeline. So the golden rule became never reveal your drop-dead date.
But the FBI framework argues that hiding your deadline is actually a catastrophic mistake. Research from UC Berkeley demonstrates that hiding a deadline drastically increases the risk of an impasse.
How so?
If you hide your deadline, you end up negotiating against yourself.
Right.
You start rushing your own concessions as your secret clock ticks down, while the other side comfortably holds out because they assume they have all the time in the world.
Well, that makes sense.
But if they know your deadline, it forces them to get to the real deal-making faster. Deadlines cut both ways. If the deal is over for you at 5 p.m., it's over for them at 5 p.m. too.
Okay, so compromise is terrible. Deadlines are mostly imaginary. What about fairness? We all just want what's fair, right? If I treat you fairly, you'll treat me fair.
Fairness is an emotional, highly volatile, and entirely subjective concept. It is not mathematical. The classic ultimatum game proves this beautifully.
I love this game. You have a proposer and an acceptor. The proposer is given $10 and has to offer a split to the acceptor. If the acceptor agrees, they both keep the money. If the acceptor refuses, they both get absolutely nothing.
Now, logically, economically, the proposer should offer one single dollar, and logically, the acceptor should eagerly take it because $1 is mathematically better than $0. But what happens when real human beings play?
If the offer is less than a quarter of the total money, say $2 out of the 10, the acceptor almost always aggressively rejects it. They will literally choose to get nothing and ensure the proposer gets nothing simply to punish the proposer for an unfair offer.
Because the negative emotional value of perceived unfairness massively outweighs the positive rational value of the free money. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied patients who had suffered localized damage to the emotional centers of their brain. Intellectually, they were fine, but they couldn't make decisions at all.
Really? None at all.
None. They could list the pros and cons endlessly, but couldn't pull the trigger. Why? Because decisions are fundamentally emotional. Without emotion, there was no choice. And the neural activity in the insular cortex directly reflects the degree of unfairness we feel.
That's incredible.
This isn't just a human trait. Primatologists have shown that even monkeys will violently reject a perfectly good cucumber if they see another monkey getting a delicious grape for doing the exact same task.
It's primal. Look at Robin Williams. He did the voice of the genie in Aladdin for a massive discount, just $75,000, because he wanted to leave a legacy for his kids. But then the movie explodes, makes $500 million, and Williams goes absolutely ballistic.
He felt cheated.
He wasn't mad about the $75,000 initially. He was infuriated by the perceived unfairness after the fact. Disney literally had to send him a $1 million original Picasso painting just to apologize and soothe his insular cortex.
Or zoom out to international geopolitics. Iran has lost billions upon billions in oil revenue due to crushing global sanctions, all to defend a nuclear program that barely meets its basic energy needs. Logically, it makes no economic sense. Why do it?
Because they feel it is fundamentally unfair that other sovereign nations possess nuclear capabilities while they are treated as second-class citizens.
Rejecting perceived unfairness, even at massive self-inflicted cost, is one of the most powerful motivators in the human psyche.
So how do we handle the F word when it comes up? The framework dictates there are 3 specific uses of the word fair in a negotiation. The first is defensive manipulation. When someone says, "We just want what's fair," it's a verbal judo throw designed to make you feel defensive and instantly concede.
If someone uses that on you, you cannot take the bait. You take a breath, you don't concede a single point. You softly say, "Okay, I apologize. Let's stop everything right now and go back to where I started treating you unfairly and we'll fix it." You call their bluff with deep empathy.
The second use is the nefarious jab. We've given you a fair offer. The NFL owners famously used this against the Players Association during a lockout to shame them and avoid opening their financial books.
In that scenario, you use the mirror. You repeat, "Fair," pause, and you drop a label. It seems like you're ready to provide the concrete evidence that supports that. You declaw the attack without being aggressive.
But the third use is proactive and positive. It's how you set the stage. Early in a negotiation, you look them in the eye and say, "I want you to feel you are being treated fairly at all times in this process. Please stop me at any time if you feel I'm being unfair, and we will address it immediately." It establishes you as an incredibly honest dealer and disarms their defenses.
This deep understanding of emotional valuation ties directly into prospect theory, developed by Kahneman and Tversky. Prospect theory describes how people actually choose between probabilistic options involving risk, and it hinges on loss aversion.
Loss aversion.
People will take far greater risks to avoid a perceived loss than they will to achieve an equal gain. The pain of losing $5 is mathematically twice as powerful as the joy of finding $5.
So how do we weaponize loss aversion to bend their reality? The framework offers a rapid-fire sequence of tactics. First, anchor their emotions. You actually start by telling them how terrible your offer is going to be.
It sounds like professional suicide, but it masterfully triggers loss aversion. There's a case where a consultant was in the UAE and needed to slash his contractor's daily rate from $2,000 down to $500. If he just walked in and offered $500, they would be profoundly insulted and walk away.
Obviously.
So he called them and initiated a massive accusation audit. "You're going to think I'm a lousy businessman, that I completely screwed up my first big project, that I lied to you, but I wanted to bring this cube before I took it to someone else."
And instantly, the cognitive frame shifted. It wasn't about the pain of losing $1,500. It was about the sudden terror of losing the remaining $500 to a rival contractor. They all accepted the deal without a fight. Next tactic, let the other guy go first, most of the time.
Since you rarely have perfect information about their true limits, letting them drop the first anchor protects you from accidentally underselling yourself. But you must beware of extreme anchors. If a seasoned pro throws out a wildly high or absurdly low number, it utilizes the anchor and adjustment effect. Your brain naturally, involuntarily, adjusts its expectations based on that first reference point, no matter how ridiculous it is.
Which leads perfectly to the third tactic, establish a range. If you're forced to name a price, allude to a similar deal to establish a ballpark. But make it a bolstering range, where the lowest end of your range is actually your secret target number.
Research from Columbia Business School proves this works phenomenally well in salary negotiations. If your goal is $130,000, ask for a range of $130,000 to $170,000. By anchoring high, the $130,000 suddenly looks like a bargain by comparison, and you get exactly what you wanted while they feel they negotiated you down to your floor.
Number 4, pivot to non-monetary terms. Make your offer seem reasonable by offering things that are practically free to you but highly valuable to them, like getting a massive discount for a training session simply by offering a cover story in a magazine, which provided priceless advertising but cost nothing to print.
Number 5 is deeply fascinating from a psychological standpoint. Use odd numbers.
Right. Why do odd numbers work so well? I always assumed a round number is just cleaner.
A round number ending in 0 feels like a soft placeholder. It feels like an opening bid. It lacks cognitive friction. But a highly specific number, like $37,263, creates cognitive friction in the receiver's brain.
Yeah.
It implies that you have done intense, meticulous calculations to arrive at that exact figure. It feels immovable, like a brick wall, rather than a soft suggestion.
And finally, number 6, surprise with a gift. After staking an extreme anchor and making them work for concessions, offer a wholly unrelated, unprompted surprise gift. It taps into the deep evolutionary instinct of reciprocity.
Let's tie all of these reality-bending tactics together by examining the case study of Angel Prado, an MBA student negotiating his post-graduation salary.
This is an absolute masterclass in application. Angel goes to his boss before graduating and pleasantly, persistently asks that the money the company was currently spending on his MBA tuition, about $31,000, should simply roll over and become his salary raise upon graduation. He plants the seed and anchors the idea early. Upon graduation, he sits down for the formal review. He first asks for a non-monetary title change, which the boss easily agrees to. Then he waits in silence for the boss to throw out a number. The boss, anchored by the previous conversations, offers the $31,000 raise.
A massive win. But Angel doesn't just say yes and leave. He stays in the pocket. He keeps talking, building empathy, actively labeling the boss's current stress with corporate investors. Then he strategically pauses, says he needs to go print the job description, creating a subtle sense of pre-deadline urgency. And when he comes back, he has physically written his newly desired compensation at the bottom of the paper, a range of $134.05K to $143K.
He used a bolstering range and specific odd numbers. The boss is visibly shocked and counters with 120K. Angel doesn't say no. He doesn't argue. He just keeps empathizing. The boss essentially starts negotiating with himself, slowly creeping up to 127K, and finally capitulates and agrees to the $134,500 base.
Unbelievable.
And Angel seals the deal beautifully by saying, "That's fair," and framing the boss as his personal champion, saying, "I'm asking you, not the board, for this. I just need you to agree." And the boss actually says, "I'll fight to get you this salary."
He fundamentally bent the reality of the room. By combining ranges, odd numbers, deep empathy, and non-monetary terms, he turned an adversarial negotiation into a collaborative problem-solving session where his boss became his ally.
This raises a really important, slightly uncomfortable question, though. How do you co-opt someone like that, steering them exactly where you want them to go without them realizing they're being manipulated? Because we've seen how a negotiation can spiral into a catastrophic train wreck when egos clash, like in the Dos Palmas incident.
Yes, you have to be careful. The Dos Palmas crisis in the Philippines in 2001 is a dark study in how not to negotiate. The Abu Sayyaf kidnapped 20 hostages from a resort, including 3 Americans. And immediately, the Philippine president went on television and declared all-out war on the kidnapper.
Just escalating instantly.
It instantly set a highly confrontational, hyper-aggressive, non-constructive dynamic. It became a contest of egos. The military, the CIA, the FBI were all squabbling over jurisdiction. The military kept launching tactical assaults in the middle of delicate negotiations.
And it ended in horrific tragedy. The Abu Sayyaf beheaded an American hostage, Guillermo Sobero, and the crisis dragged on for a year until a massive, bloody firefight ended it. It was a total failure of process.
And the excruciating lesson extracted from that failure was that high-stakes negotiation cannot be a wrestling match. You cannot rely on exhausting your opponent into submission. True leverage is about coaxing. You have to get your counterpart to do the heavy lifting for you, to arrive at your preferred solution and believe it was their own idea.
You have to create the ultimate illusion of control, and the primary tool for that, bringing us full circle back to Harvard, is the calibrated question.
Exactly. You drain the hostility out of a confrontation by transforming a rigid demand into a fluid how or what question. If someone is threatening to walk out of a deal, instead of saying, "You can't leave, we have a contract," you ask, "What do you hope to achieve by leaving right now?"
It removes the aggressive friction.
It acknowledges their autonomy and it forces their brain to engage in problem solving. It makes them believe they are the ones defining the boundaries of the conversation when, in fact, you are the one quietly steering the ship.
Okay, let's pull all of this together and wrap this massive deep dive up. We have covered a staggering amount of ground today, from the murky life or death waters of hostage negotiation to the sterile boardrooms of Harvard Law. What is the grand unifying summary here?
It's that whether you are dealing with an international terrorist, a grumpy corporate boss, or a stubborn toddler who won't eat their vegetables, the hidden rules of human psychology remain exactly the same.
You have to ditch the false, rigid edifice of pure logic. Start using your late-night FM DJ voice to biologically trigger calm. Deploy tactical empathy and labeling to expose and diffuse the amygdala's fears. Use an accusation audit to preemptively take the sting out of bad news.
Stop hunting for the cheap, counterfeit yes, and start actively inviting no to make your counterpart feel safe, respected, and autonomous. Use summaries combining paraphrasing with labeling to achieve that magical, transformative breakthrough of hearing "that's right."
And once you have established deep trust, bend their reality using anchoring, ranges, odd numbers, and loss aversion, all while using calibrated questions to give them the complete illusion of control.
It is a radically different, profoundly effective way of looking at human interaction.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today as you go about your week. Think back to that opening scenario about the raise and the compromise. We want humans to be logical, clean, predictable machines. We want a spreadsheet for life.
But we aren't spreadsheets.
This framework reveals that we are fundamentally emotional, highly irrational creatures. And beneath all the bluster, our most primal, desperate urge is simply the need to be deeply understood and validated.
At our core, we just want someone to accurately summarize our pain and our perspective so we can exhale and say, "That's right."
Exactly. So here is the thought. If the absolute highest level of FBI hostage negotiation, like talking an armed terrorist out of beheading an innocent person, is essentially just providing a high-stakes psychotherapy session, are we actually negotiating in our daily lives?
That's a deep question.
Or are we all just walking around conducting continuous mutual therapy sessions with varying stakes, desperately hoping someone will finally listen to the voice inside our heads? If unconditional positive regard is what it takes to stop a bank robber, what does that say about the profound state of disconnection in our everyday human relationships?
It's a powerful question that reframes every conversation we have. The tools to connect are right there, but the empathy driving them has to be genuine.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this massive deep dive today. Go out there, embrace the no, use your DJ voice, and we will catch you next time.